Welcome to Behind Every Employer, where leaders in business and education from across the country share solutions for sourcing, training, and growing frontline talent to create the workforce of tomorrow. This broadcast is brought to you by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. To learn more, check us out at www.coabe.org or any of your favorite podcast sites. Now, here are your hosts, Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz.
Hello there, Mr. Green. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Fantastic. Good to see you again. We got so many good episodes coming out right now, and this is going to be one that I just want to jump right into because there is just so much for this group to chat with us about. We've got Kelly Aiken from UMass Memorial joining us with her colleague in the education space there for the hospital there, Mandy Townsend from JVS Boston. And I can tell you, having worked with Kelly for well over a year, in the employer-based space, we did work together on internationally trained professionals. They've really got something going on at the hospital there. And as I spoke more and more with Mandy and Kelly, learned more about just this nexus of social service, education, all kinds of things in this hospital district in Boston that is just like probably unprecedented. I've never seen anything quite like it. So I'm so excited to have them tell us more about that. What's up with you, man?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this call. I mentioned earlier, we were talking before we got on air that I used to work, was an executive director at Jeff's Human Services, one of the JVS partners in Philadelphia for a number of years. I'm really excited about this. To the heart of the medical field is Boston, and having them both on today, really interested in this discussion.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally. Let's get out
to it. Welcome.
Hello. Hey, great to see you guys. Hi. Well, thank you guys for coming in here. And, we've had a few episodes on the podcast in healthcare. They've been in different facets of it, but I'm really looking forward to this one. And I think both of you just share some really powerful perspectives for employers. I think you're going to be able to really preview and see from Kelly's perspective really how to integrate some incredibly rich services for a very diverse population in the hospital there. And then Mandy, JVS, this is just a historic service agency on multiple fronts that is well known. I was telling her before the show, I think when I first got into workforce development and education, JVS, some document of JVS I remember vividly has been something I, hugged onto quite a bit early in my career. So that name's been with me. Jeff, you worked there for a while, so there's a lot of good connections here. So let's jump into it. Kelly, I want to start with you, and then I'll bring you in Mandy. Just tell our listeners about yourself a little bit, what you do at UMass Memorial, about the hospital, and your caregiver workforce, because that's what we're here to hear about is like, what are you doing to support that caregiver workforce?
Great. Well, hi, everybody. So nice to be here. I am the Director of Workforce Development and Planning at UMass Memorial Health. And just to set the record straight, we are actually not in Boston, but we are about 50 miles west of Boston. But actually, our geography plays a big role in why we're partnering with Mandy and JVS Boston, and I know we'll get to that in a minute. But UMass Memorial Health is the largest employer in the central region of Massachusetts, and we are an academic medical center that has a network of community hospitals, behavioral health services, et cetera. And so we have a wide range of what we call caregivers. Everybody is a caregiver, including myself. As we take care of our caregivers. And that's really kind of the way in which we look at workforce development within the system. Workforce development is pretty new to UMass Memorial Health. I've been in this space for about 15 years, but UMass, I've only been at UMass for the last couple of years. And I was brought on because they realized after the pandemic that they weren't really prepared to tap into a workforce that wasn't really showing up at their doorstep, and if they were facing barriers in really advancing their careers at UMass Memorial Health.
Sure.
And so we have been on a 2-year journey to really meet our caregivers where they are and develop pathways, pipeline programs, and really foundational skill development opportunities for them so that they can deliver the best care possible while at the same time growing their careers at UMass Memorial Health. So that's a little bit about us. We do have close to 20,000 employees.
Wow.
Scattered throughout a region that it runs from the New Hampshire border down to Connecticut and Rhode Island. So, but we are in deep competition with Boston for caregivers, and so we really have used this opportunity, particularly since Worcester, where we're based, is considered a gateway city. And it is a destination for many immigrants and refugees across the Commonwealth. And we're really trying to figure out how to be a welcoming community and a welcoming employer so that they see us as a place that they can grow their careers.
Fantastic. And Worcester has a place for me. I did ESOL training there like 15 years ago and had a flat tire in Worcester. So I remembered it vividly. Okay. So we're putting it together here and kind of getting a picture of the situation there. And what I want to hear more about though is like, and we just hear this in all of our episodes, this competition for talent. And everyone's looking for talent. They're digging deep on talent, finding it in new places. And you guys are working in this very diverse community. And so your talent pool is very diverse, very language diverse. And then, of course, healthcare is a very, specific set of skills and abilities and competencies and quality that has to be maintained. And so sometimes people say, like, how can we mesh something like a healthcare, which has got all these restrictions and all these qualifications and all these certifications to do work to protect the individuals that they're taking care of? How do we do that with such a language diverse population and keep things running? So I want to hear more about that story. You've had so much success tapping into this community. And what are the things that your hospital has put in place to kind of accommodate and adjust to that really diverse workforce?
Great. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Healthcare is, at its core is designed to meet patients and our community needs. And the only way we can do that is if we have a workforce that reflects our community. And so we really have no choice but to meet our community members where they are. And I just was looking at some stats. We have over 85 nations represented in Worcester County, and 37% speak of that. They speak English is their predominant language. So that's a lot of folks for whom English is not their first language, right? Sure. And we have folks from Ghana, Vietnam, Dominican Republic, Brazil. Really a huge array of countries that are represented. But almost 17% are foreign-trained individuals with bachelor's degrees from their home countries. And that's just bachelor's degree. That doesn't take into consideration the foreign-born physicians or nurses, et cetera. Well, actually, it does take them into consideration, but it doesn't call them out specifically. And so we really, and as people are landing in the Commonwealth, and I think Mandy can speak most clearly to this, is that, first and foremost, they need to be able to improve their English skills or gain their English skills so that they can find a job and then find a job that recognizes and takes advantage of the training and education that they already have.
Right.
We're really trying to provide that bridge between landing in Worcester County, needing a job, and then developing or gaining the licensure and certification that they need to really be doing the job that they were trained for originally, which can take a long, long time depending on English proficiency levels and their ability to, pass certification exams. So our starting point with the help of JVS Boston was to start offering workplace English and offering that specifically to our food service and housekeeping folks, where we've eliminated our high school diploma requirements
Nice.
so that folks can start those jobs. We also now are very clear about what it takes to get your international education credentials validated. And we've done that with the support of Wes, so that we really are clear with people that you can start your career at UMass Memorial Health. We will provide you with free workplace English classes while you're on the job or while you are working. And then we will support you in figuring out how to proceed and gain the certifications and requirements that you want based on what an individual has decided to do. So that's what we're doing. We also now, with JVS's help, are offering free citizenship interview preparation classes, so that folks, and that is both for our own caregivers as well as their family members, because we really see that as a step for individuals to take so that they can advance their careers. So that's really what we've been doing. We complement that with pathway programs where we're paying people to gain the skills that they need to move into our critical jobs, such as nursing assistants at the bedside, medical assistants, et cetera. So we're trying to stitch together a foundation from people to launch their careers, and then technical skills training so that they can really advance.
Great. Well, going to bring Mandy right in here for us. And so, Mandy, and I want to come back to some of these points too, especially the internationally trained professionals and that kind of career pathing that you're looking at within the hospital. So, Mandy, fleshed out a little bit more about the community in terms of like who are we talking about? Help us get a feel for like that, because they're probably coming to JVS first in many sense. Looking for a job or looking for some career development or English classes. So talk about the community and then JVS in general. Like you guys are just a powerhouse out there in terms of social services and education and training.
Yeah, thanks. And I think Kelly was very humble as to why they brought her in. I just want to give her some props. She is a nationally recognized workforce development person. So UMass is really lucky to have her. I think they know it too. Thanks, Anson. So JVS is the largest workforce development organization in the New England region. We have about 280 staff, give or take, about 60 career coaches. And every year we see around 13,000 job seekers. So we have some light touch services and some intensive services. And we also operate one of the one-stop career centers in Massachusetts. And so JVS sits at this beautiful intersection of job seeker and employer, right? Our talent want jobs, our employers want talent. And so we sort of are the matchmaker in that equation. Right. And sort of our logo is skills, jobs, and careers. So if people need skills, we get them skills. If they need a job, they get a job. And the careers piece is what we're focusing on here today, is upskilling folks once they get into that first job or that economic opportunity, taking it farther for them through the utilization of our incumbent worker training, which is what we do with Kelly and many others. And so JVS historically has served an immigrant population as a majority. So about 70% of our folks are immigrant identified as immigrants. And then the rest are just folks seeking jobs from, any age range, any place around the greater Boston region, which has really expanded since COVID, as we were talking about. Our reach has really grown a bit, but we see mid-level career changers, higher level career changers, and people looking for their first opportunity, and certainly those internationally trained professionals. And so the folks that Kelly's seeing at our hospital, I would say is a replication here in Boston of what we have too for our job seekers and people looking for opportunities across sectors.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So Kelly, I want to come back to you real quick and give us a little sense of like, the process of me working at the hospital and getting introduced to the ESL program. Like, how do I find out about it? Some people are probably being referred from JVS, from Mandy's organization. People are applying to the hospital, and then you say, "Hey, we've got an ESL class for you." Like, talk us through, when does that occur in the process? Is it on day one? Do they have to meet a certain criteria? Tell us a little bit about the onboarding into this program. And then I want to talk about your training institute, because that's just the thing that just blew my socks off when we heard about that.
Yeah. So we are, admittedly, we are just in our second cohort of workplace English. So we're still learning, honestly, how to reach people, but it's obviously it's first getting to managers so that they know that they can hire someone who may have limited English and who they want to start into a workplace English class. And so it's connecting with our recruiters who are talking directly with individuals who want to come to work. It's talking to managers who are hiring them. And then it's talking to the caregivers themselves. You know, we do everything from, you know, kind of old school, handing out flyers, going to the cafeteria and talking to people, to promoting it, you know, in all of our electronic resources. But, you know, we really have to, we cannot rely on one way in which we are reaching individuals. And honestly, it's word of mouth that ultimately becomes the best source and referral. So in our first class, and I'd love Mandy to talk a little bit about this is not a short-term commitment for our caregivers. Really, it's a 9-month class if they start at the very beginning. They do it on their own time. And one of the reasons why is because Mandy will tell you a little bit about why we are buying seats in the Healthcare Training Institute and the Workplace English program specifically, is because we are able to offer so many levels at so many different times to our caregivers because JVS is aggregating individuals, English language learners from across multiple hospitals. So that was one of the reasons why we chose to buy seats as opposed to try to build our own program or bring it in-house and do it in person. So this is an online program that is accessible by phone, by tablet, by computer, that really is offered at so many different times that a caregiver is figuring out what's going to work best for them.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works right now. And our managers are incredibly supportive. Last year on our first round, it took us a while to fill the class because it was new. This year, within, 4 or 5 weeks of opening up the applications, it was full. So we expect to keep growing that as we move forward.
I'm curious. I'm curious about that because and maybe this is more a Mandy answer. Is many of the students that you must see have many barriers to successful reintegration back into their communities and into the employment arena, especially people that are non-English speaking. And I'm wondering, do you offer any supports for them as they go through their online class, and what does that look like? And is there any kind of mentorship programming that goes along with them or assistance that they get over the course of the course itself?
I can start, and Kelly, I can pass it to you. So I would say that, a lot of our immigrant workforce are making very difficult decisions for themselves and their families. Do I go to school? Does my child get the after school curriculum that they need? Do I work? Do I stay home with my children? What's childcare? So they're making these really high cost calculations. And so when employers are offering education at work, it removes one of the questions that they're asking themselves. Like, I want to give everything to my children. I want them to have a life here, but how do I start growing my own skills and my own career? And so I always tell employers who offer this, you are making that calculus much easier for your workforce when you're offering English during work times so that they can educate themselves and get their own career track going while taking care of the needs of their whole family. A lot of them are caring for elders and children at the same time. And so I would say all of our programs are supported by a manager and a coach and an admin. And so we have a lot of different people who are supporting and wrapping around these folks. And fortunately, JVS is lucky to have service services around barrier removal and flex supports. And so if a client in one of our classes is identified as having a housing challenge or a childcare challenge, we can refer them to a team who can provide some wraparound supports to help them move along in their journey. And once they're members of, one of the classes or our career center, they have access to financial coaching. They have access to a lot of our barrier removal services that they might not otherwise have. And so we wrap around the hospital, and I know the hospital also has services themselves.
That's awesome. That's great.
Fantastic. Let's dive into this. We've kind of glanced around the topic of the Healthcare Training Institute. And when I heard about this, it warmed my heart because one of my first teaching jobs was teaching ESL and GED in a program that was in the South Texas Medical Center. And of course, this was nothing compared to what you guys are doing in terms of like capacity, but that proximity was very attractive for the workers. They're coming to work, it's a massive complex, tens of thousands of workers kind of in one, probably, 10 square miles or something like that. And it brings a lot of value. So talk about this training center that these different businesses are kind of collaborating on, which I find very fascinating and really empowering. And just kind of how does that work? And what is it like? What kind of services are offered there? And just let's hear about this institute.
Yeah, you and me both, Anson. That's where I started my career too in workforce development as an ESL teacher.
Nice.
Companies. So we've been doing incumbent worker training at our employers partner sites for over 30 years, starting in healthcare. So we got a firm grasp about 30 years ago with MGB, the biggest employer in Massachusetts, Mass General Brigham. And we built a small program. We were coming on site, teaching in-person English classes to their frontline workforce, which continued to grow every year. As Kelly said, the first year you start small, you don't know what the demand is, and then people tell their friends, and they tell their friends, and then it grows into a big program. And the way that JVS thinks about our work is that we're a business too. So we think like a business. We want to be under the tent with the business. Whenever we can, we want to have an office within that business. We want to be walking down the halls and seen as a coworker rather than the external vendor who's working on things. And so we really think about partnership. And so the way we've grown our incumbent worker training line of service is through deep partnership with our healthcare consortium here in Boston. And so in 2008, we were really lucky to expand this work because we were given a space over in the Longwood Medical Center, which is where all of our major hospitals are. And we had a physical space. We had 3 classrooms. We had an office. We were in the basement, and 3 different hospitals would send their frontline staff there for classes in digital literacy and English. They would do it on a shift change, and it was really nice. To Kelly's point earlier, they could see people from different hospitals in the same role and chat about their experiences, chat about their country, meet people, share their foods, right? Have breaks together. And when you have friends at work, it's going to increase your engagement and your ability to stay at that job. And so we were creating these little cohorts, and we were able to really grow that quite a bit over in that space. And then COVID hit. And so during COVID, before COVID, we weren't doing too much remotely. We were doing a little bit remotely, but we had expanded from healthcare into food service, and we were in restaurants, we're in some hotels. So we train about 1,400 people every year across multiple sectors. But at this healthcare training institute, it was always in person, and we were, very much focused on that. And when COVID hit, we had about 2 weeks to shift all of our programming online. And again, when I say think like a business, we don't sit around wringing our hands. We're like, okay, what are we going to do? Our leadership team is meeting together every single day. And we had an online platform within about 2 weeks, and everything went online. That continued for many years, and we saw success of people being able to come from home. And when they're not at work, or if they're off sick, they can still come to school right at work. And the other benefit it allowed for us, and Kelly's a testament to this, is bringing in employers in the healthcare space, but from remote geographical regions that we never were able to serve because we'd have to send an instructor out there. And so Kelly joined us 2 years ago, and we have been successfully sort of growing the HTI concept. So it's a healthcare training institute, but it consists of Beth Israel Lahey Health, Mass General Brigham System, the Boston Children's Hospital, UMass Memorial, and those are our healthcare partners in the consortium right now. And the great thing about it is, before it was one hospital, one class, one hospital, one class. But when you have a system where you have lots of classes, you can have more levels, and you can offer seats. seats. And a hospital can buy the number of seats that they need. So they don't have to purchase a class itself. They can say, I got 5 beginners, I've got 5 intermediate folks, and I've got 2 advanced, or I need you to do this class for research fellows, or can you do this class for animal care techs? And we're able to really incorporate specialized things, but keep it contextualized around healthcare. So it's not English for English's sake. It's English for career growth, which is very important.
I love that. And I mean, this idea, obviously the hospitals have like bought into the idea of, kind of being a collective when it comes to the ESL program. And sometimes you see just the opposite. They're like, I don't want my employees talking to their employees, they'll poach each other and things like that. They have seen the value of this because otherwise it probably would not be happening for them. And also, the central location of it, just all that criticality. And then you mentioned the levels. Jeff knows, anybody that's been in this field knows, making the class, meaning having enough people, is what makes or breaks any program. And we've all been in those programs where you start with 16, you're down to 9, you get to 7, you're at 3, and you're closing the class. But here, because you're being able to compile these different employers together, their workers, you can not only keep the classes solvent, but you can also offer the multiple levels, which is
we've doubled the number of seats in HTI just because of that exact principle. And if we find a collective of number of people need a new level, we can. And just one addition to your point, Anson, a lot of employers will say to me, well, I don't know, I want to invest all this money in training this person, and what if they leave? And I always ask the reverse question: what if you don't train them and they stay? And then you have a workforce who's untrained, maybe not safe doing their jobs. And so I would be worried about that other question versus if you invest in your workforce, they're going to stay and they're going to be really with you on that.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about like the curriculum, like in the Healthcare Training Institute. Are you doing real specific healthcare related curriculum? Is there more general starter curriculum? Like, what kind of topics are you talking about in the class?
Yeah, absolutely. We take a poll of what people are doing, what jobs they're doing. Okay. Our instructors will go shadow those jobs. Our managers also shadow those jobs, so they see what kind of interactions the students in the classes are having with patients in the hospitals. And then we contextualize our English classes around that. And if there's a real specific need, so we did a tray line server class one time because they were instituting a new tray line serving software. If there are specialized needs, we'll make some tailored classes. But in general, it's customer service language and vocabulary in healthcare specific to providing excellent patient care, because that's the commonality across all hospitals. You got a patient walking down the hall, they're going to ask where the bathroom is. They don't care if you're a nurse, a doctor, or an environmental service worker. So everybody needs some level of customer service in order to meet the patient standards that they have.
Oh, fantastic. Kelly, I want to turn to you and talk some about the internationally trained professionals. You had mentioned this at the very beginning. So for our listeners, this is like a population of workers in the United States, very large, actually about 10 to 15% of any immigrant population is going to have college trained individuals within it. Now, you may or we may not think they're college trained because they don't speak English, and we don't know. We've never asked them, if they went to school outside the U.S., but it's a large population. That's where Kelly and I did a lot of work together. And I did a lot of work early in my career in healthcare. I had what we called a Welcome Back Center in San Antonio, which was a center for healthcare professionals here. There was one up in Boston, actually, also. And there, with University Hospital here in San Antonio, we found that there was this very large collection of individuals that were internationally trained, working in other occupations in the hospital. They had gravitated back to the hospital, back into the cafeteria, maybe an orderly, because they're healthcare workers, and they may be a phlebotomist or they may be a doctor, but they want to be back in their career area while they're working on their skills and stuff. And so through the Welcome Back Center, through what you're doing, I think we're going to hear about it. You're helping to kind of like accelerate that path for them, knowing that they've got credentials outside the U.S. They've got, great skills. They're great learners. So talk a little bit about, first off, how are you finding these workers? Are they in your ESL classes? Are they in the cafeteria? Yeah. Are they in the attendant class?
Yeah, that's one of the first questions that employers have to ask themselves. and then figure out what kind of data is needed. Where are they? And we are still working through that, Anson. And that is, I think that the first thing that we typically think about is, what kind of programs should we offer? We really had to step back, in part because we were implementing a new information system to on the HR side. And so it's been a good opportunity to ask ourselves, how do we collect this data? How do we know it? And this is still a journey that we are on, and we have not solved that problem. But I will say that we are actively recruiting people into both ESOL. So we're learning about what they aspire to during those programs. But really, it's through our training programs where we are touching those folks. And so JVS is working with us to provide those to do recruiting and wraparound services to individuals who want to become nursing assistants at the bedside, which is very typical. We just had a graduation this week, and we had a woman who is trained in India as a nurse and is in the PCA program. And when she, at graduation, that's her number one goal, is that she wants to become a nurse here in the US. But the first thing that she needs to do is to be making money and to be, to be getting benefits and to supporting her family. So we feel like what we call our PCA pathway program is a great starting point for individuals as they get their feet on the ground, and as we expand our career services so that we can really help people in that journey. But we too have a Welcome Back Center in Boston, and we really are helping people understand what resources are available by offering the citizenship prep classes. We, those are the resources that people need to take that next step. So it's really first, trying to meet our critical workforce needs, knowing that we have individuals. I mean, somebody like the individual I mentioned, her ability to go through a skills training program is very accelerated because she already has the skills. She just has to learn how to communicate. We use different terms, etc. So that's the work that we're doing. We offer free medical terminology for our caregivers, and we are starting to roll out career coaching. But by working with JVS and starting this program from scratch, we really have been able to leapfrog over, a lot of the building blocks that people have to put into place to get these programs off the ground. Mandy and I have worked together for years, and with the kind of pressures to get programs off the ground really quickly, I think an employer has to make a very, very, calculated decision. Are you going to buy something, buy services, or are you going to build services? And in this instance, buying services made absolutely the most sense. But it took me a while. It took some convincing of senior leadership that JVS was a trusted resource, that this was something that we should leave the community for, right? That was also something to discuss and decide upon. But I also think that, back to Mandy's comment about why the Healthcare Training Institute in its pre-COVID days was multiple employers coming together and having the trust and confidence to do that work. It's really predicated on all of us across the state. We have an incredible network of workforce development professionals across the state who are working together to solve problems at the state and local levels. It's an incredible community. So it's a community that exists in every state. So I really firmly, invite people to explore how to get involved in that network, because as an employer, we really do not have to reinvent the wheel. There are so many resources, and it's not where we are experts. We need to, lean on the experts that really understand how to meet people where they are, and to deliver those services. So that's why we've been able to, launch 3 programs in our first year of operation. So that was the only way we could do it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know part of the backstory on just kind of you advocating within the organization to make the case for these services and your leadership, which is obviously pretty enlightened to kind of say, like, let's push this forward. It's very, very fortunate for you. You'd mentioned credentialing services and World Education Services and WES, as you refer to them. We refer to them always. Tell us a little bit about that piece of this. How does that fit in on the kind of re-credentialing piece? And it's probably a journey for you still. I mean, that's a kind of sometimes a longer term gambit,
Yeah. Oh, well, this is great because actually, so Mandy's team, we were launching our PCA pathway program, and we are recruiting individuals from the community, and we have to ensure that they have credentials that have been evaluated if they are foreign educated or trained. And there was a moment at which the JVS team said, well, I'm sure you just do this internally. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming we do too. And it took a lot of digging to learn that while we said we did it, we actually didn't do it very well. And there were some countries, including Ghana, which is one of the countries where we have the most immigrants from, that our validation service was not effective at all. And so as a result, Mandy's team was bringing in candidates. They would get an offer from a hiring manager and then go into then they would what we call pre-hire onboarding. And they realized that they didn't have anything to demonstrate that their credentials had been evaluated and confirmed and verified. And so that's because I was participating in the Skilled Immigrant Integration Program at WES, and Anson, you were my technical advisor. I started doing more digging on what is it really going to take to communicate to the community and to our community-based organizations what people need to do before they come and try to get a job with us. And so literally, we are just publishing those requirements. They're in the final stages of approval, and those will start to get circulated to JVS, to our local community or our local career center, so that people are directed to WES or there's another service out of Boston that will turn around. They'll do the validation. But like that was not obvious. It was really like buried. And so now we can transparently communicate to people. We can work with our community-based partners to say, this is how you should be working with your clients, and really moving them through that verification process before you promote them as a job-ready candidate.
Right,
so that's how it's worked.
Yeah, it seems to be a piece that's under appreciated and maybe not fully understood, and it's really incumbent upon folks like ourselves to make sure that we're pushing that out there as like a very kind of elementary or significant tool that is very powerful too for the individual once they have their credentials that have been validated and stuff. So I'm glad to see that the WES program has really brought some value out there, and that awareness piece is one we need to keep our eyes on, because I've run into the same situation. And then like your story was just chilling, where it's like you're getting the offer, and then all of a sudden you've lost all this, effort to try to get some talent, and now it goes out the door, just because of awareness about what that process would be like with the credentialing. Absolutely. Well, Jeff, man, this is, I tell you what.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And before we go to the lightning round, I just have one quick thought or comment, which is, it's incredible the partnership piece of this, which, this can't happen without all the people being at the table, including private industry, and bringing them there. And JVS across the country has this passion for doing this. I remember where I was, we partnered with CVS, and they built us an entire pharmacy so we could do a farm tech program. Right. And we also partnered with LabCorp, and they were teaching phlebotomy. And then it turned out also that those phlebotomy jobs were not the only need that LabCorp had. They had 3,000 warehousing logistics jobs they needed filled at the same time. So those total partnerships were trying to meet their labor needs. And I think that the work you're doing is remarkable, but having the Institute and having everybody at that table is what makes this also special. So remarkable work, and keep it up. yeah, definitely a model for the country to start following.
Well, take us out to that lightning round, because I want to hear what our great guests have to say.
Yeah.
Charge our audience forward with something to do.
All right, you're listening to Behind Every Employer. We'll be right back.
You've been listening to Behind Every Employer with Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz. It's one thing to talk the talk, but in the lightning round, which is coming up, we walk the walk with action steps. You can listen to Behind Every Employer podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or find us on your favorite podcast vendor.
We are back at the lightning round, and everyone knows that listens to us knows that this is the time when we like everybody to go around the horn and give us a takeaway, give us an action step you'd like to see everyone when they get done listening today. What can they do to help move the needle? And who wants to kick us off? We'll keep it open. Anybody?
Kelly, why don't you jump in there? You got so much to say here.
Well, I think to employers, I would say take a look under the hood first before you jump into anything. Check out what you've got in place. I mean, just as Anson mentioned previously, how are you communicating to immigrants and refugees about coming to work for you? Are you clear about what kind of requirements you have? And then look for partners. Look for partners and really consider buying versus building.
Yep. I'll go next, and this is also for employers. The thing that always just kind of breaks my heart is that we miss workers, especially internationally trained professional workers, at the application process. Because we might have questions about education, and they say, ESL class or something, because they can barely read the application because they're non-English or limited English speakers. Questions about, like, have you been educated or trained outside the U.S.? One question, and I know HR doesn't like to add questions to the application, but that one question, and I've seen companies do this. One question all of a sudden creates this cohort of individuals that are limited English, but have outside credentialing, outside education. And that gives you, those individuals may languish for the rest of their careers and never be identified. And I have seen that. I have seen nurses that have worked in hospitals as orderlies and in the commissary for 7 or 8 years because no one really pursued and asked them, had you been trained outside the U.S.? Were you a nurse? So that's that brain waste topic that we hear about, and it's one simple question at the beginning that can really help change your pool of what you're seeing come in, because we know by demographics they're in the immigrant and refugee pool, 10 to 15% of them. Well, if you look at your hospital, healthcare center, and say, like, how many workers do we have? How many of them are born outside the U.S.? Right there, you can kind of do 10 to 15% are probably college educated or have some sort of training. That is a really powerful kind of trapped talent in the hospital there, in the healthcare facility. So that's my charge, is to kind of think about that application, and can you make one little edit to it to kind of really open up a new source of information for you to start really leveraging the talent that you're hiring. Mandy,
I love it.
What do you got?
Man?
I'll go next. So I've got two, one for employers and one for service providers. So for employers, we do a lot of coaching and working with employers on job quality and job redesigns to attract and retain workforce. And I think that employers oftentimes get really overwhelmed because they feel like they got to boil the ocean, right? There's something wrong. I got to fix everything at once. So I would just say start really small. Figure out a small tactical change that you can do. It might be low time intensive, low cost, and then move to those high time intensity, high cost solutions, but pilot something. Start really small, show some success. You don't have to do it all at once. And when you are trying to sell something, particularly your leadership team, if you have a small demonstrated pilot, you're going to have more success rolling it up and scaling it out if you have a really small pilot. And I would say to the service providers or the partners out there who are doing this work, is do what you say you're going to do. I think that's one of my biggest mottos in my team and at JVS is that we demonstrate results. And if we don't, we die trying, right? And we have conversations with our partners like Kelly, like, hey, this didn't work, but we are fixing it in these 3 ways, or this went really well. Like, let's continue doing this. But I think we're pretty transparent in our partnership, in our communication with our employer partners, and we deliver results. We don't talk about it, and we don't sit around trying to figure out what to do. We are building that plane while we're flying it many times, because business moves really fast. So the service providers have to move fast as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Start small too. That is so important. People want to boil the ocean, as you say. But if it blows up in your face, and then you lose all the advocacy that you've been kind of pushing within the company to make the case for the space and make the case for the time and make the case for the expenditure. Get 5 people, get 10 people, and do something that everybody feels good about, because that builds the energy. That's a great point, Mandy. Jeff, what do you got?
Yeah, I got one that no one's hit on, and that's for our students out there. And for the students that have come into our country with a trade, a skill, a passion, something that they've always done or were trained to do in their home country, speak up. It takes courage to stand up and say, you know what, I was a doctor, I was good where I was. I was an anesthesiologist, I was a nurse. And know that there are resources in our country that will help you get back to that profession that you loved and that you did. And that you were. And it does take courage for our students to do that. And we have to encourage them and let them know there are resources out there like what Mandy have, what Kelly have, that can really help them get that success. So to the students out there, get some courage. Ask that question. Go to talk to your facility, your providers, and see if they can help you. There you go.
All right. Fantastic. Well, this has been great, Mandy and Kelly. Thank you so much. I hope we can have you back on, because there's just so much packed into some of the things you're doing that we need to unpack for our listeners. And I want to thank our listeners out there. We've got so much coming out this year and some really good episodes. You can find us on all the major podcast apps, on YouTube, and just don't hesitate to reach out if you've got a great story to tell with an employer yourself. We are always looking for new guests to come on the show. Take us out, Jeff.
You got it. Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to Behind Every Employer with Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz. If you like the show, please follow us and tell your friends and colleagues. This broadcast has been brought to you by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. You can find us at www.coabe.org. You can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, or on your favorite podcast site. If you'd like to be a guest on Behind Every Employer, please contact us at behindeveryemployer@coabe.org.